Hello and welcome to our today's session, which will be devoted to Extensible SAP NetWeaver Gateway Services with Vesna Framework. We are going to take a closer look at an SAP NetWeaver Gateway material service, which forms part of a Cool Orange PowerGate product integrating Autodesk and SAP World. This service consists of various entities, allowing for access, among others, to basic material data and plant data. Next, we are going to take a look at those entities. At first, we are going to call the material service for a specified material and request basic data entity. This entity contains basic material master information and allows us to see the information like material number, like industry sector, material type, material group, or unit of measure. Next, we are going to request plant data entity in order to have a look at the plant related information of this specific material. The plant-related information include attributes like plant number, purchasing group, availability check, or purchasing status. Now, let's have a look at the code behind the service. The code, which you can see here, has been implemented in a DPC-Ext class, which is an extension for the data provider class. This is a generic code and it handles all the requests to all the entities in the service. Obviously, get entity requests only. The 3 lines of code at the bottom form a bridge pattern and implement entire logic of the service. In order for the service to be able to process the data, it must be fed with the context information, and this is what happens in the lines above. All the context variables are fed into the Vesna Framework before calling the service. However, our starting point will be in fact Vesna application container containing entire runtime information about the service. This information is read from an XML configuration file identified based upon entity type name. In such a way, service can afford to offload its entire logic to loosely coupled classes and leave only generic part here. This is the brain of the application, being Vesna Framework configuration file. It contains the information on classes used in the application as well as their dependencies. In fact, its syntax is nearly identical to a Java Spring configuration file. However, in addition to objects which are fully managed by Vesna Framework, we also have an option to use objects that are externally registered and provided by application context. This is quite often the case in SAP, and Vesna Framework provides for that. Now you can see in the method code how those external objects are registered with the Vesna Framework application container. Each time a specific label bean name is used, an object is passed to the framework. We have also an option to pass non-object oriented data by the means of wrapping it into external value container, as you can see in the line 199 here. Now we are going to debug both the service calls we have seen previously in order to see Vesna Framework in action. We will start by retrieving basic data. The first and most important step in any Vesna Framework application is the application container initialization based upon an XML configuration file. In this service, such a configuration file is identified based upon entity type name. All the labels you can see below, bean labels like logger, destination finder, message container, and so on, only resolve to their specific values in a specific Vesna application context. Thus, Vesna application displays natively polymorphous behavior, allowing us to decouple application structure from its particular implementation. We will see in a minute how precisely the same application behaves in a different way when we use a different configuration file. This is the result of a call to the basic data entity. Now, let's see what happens when we request plant data entity. This time, a Vesna application container has been initialized with a different XML configuration file, which comes from the fact that it was identified using entity type name plant data. This results in a completely different service logic which follows. This session is a very introductory one really, but just to whet your appetite for more, I'd like to draw your attention to the debugger window in the upper right hand corner, which displays types coming really from the aspect-oriented features of the Vesna framework. However, this is something we're not going to discuss in this session yet. And this is the result of our call. Now, let's have a look how the layout of a Vesna configuration file is reflected in the underlying code. We have here constructor parameters as well as so-called setter methods, which consist of a set underscore prefix and a property name. We would expect something like this in the code. Indeed, when we navigate to the Arcona 6 default get entity class as configured in the file, and we go further to its superclass and take a look at the signature of the constructor, we will see that it contains exactly the same parameters as defined in the Vesna configuration file. At runtime, the objects resolved based upon Vesna configuration file should be compatible with the types defined in the underlying ABAP objects code. Previously mentioned setter methods provide, in addition to constructor parameters, an alternative way to pass dependencies to an ABAP object managed by Vesna Framework. Also in this case, the reference must be compatible. You may have noticed that in some places we refer to beans, objects, which have never been defined in the Vesna configuration file. This is, however, no error. These objects are those ones that are already provided by the application contexts provided by SAP NetWeaver Gateway in this case, and we have to register them with a Vesna application container by the means of using register bean method. Such an object is assigned a unique label which can be further used in a Vesna configuration file. Apart from being able to use non-object oriented ABAP4 data, this ability to use externally provided objects is one of the strongest points of Vesna Framework in SAP environment. Thanks to this, we can also productively use Vesna in small developments like user exits. It is time for a brief summary of our demo. While you watch the listing of features that we have seen throughout the presentation, let me stress that probably the most important feature of Vesna Framework is that it promotes application decomposition. On the one hand, you have XML configuration file and the application architecture laid out in front of you. On the other, when programming, you can fully concentrate on the matter in hand and not be tangled with the whole of the application. You do not have to believe me, you can try it out for yourself, as Vesna Framework is free for research and non-commercial use, and you can download it right now using the link provided in this presentation. Thank you.